Hello, YouTubers. Joe and Paul here on the second of Paul's days off on Wednesday, October 9th, 2013, about 2 in the afternoon Eastern Time. Now, the occasion of this video, of all things, well, the video is going to sort of be about pokeberries, but the occasion for this was that Paul went down into the dog yard, or as my mother would have called it, the dogless yard, since we're dogless right at the moment. Much as she called the music room the musicless room after it became clear that neither of her two children were going to be able to play the piano worth a daggone. So Paul went down to the dogless yard, and there were several pokeberries growing up there. Now, they'd come up, they're perennial plants, so they come up every year, and so when they came up, we'd go down and chop them down, you know. But since the last year and a half, there's not been a reason to do that. There were a number of these things that had gotten, well, they'd gotten about 3 to 5 feet tall, and Paul went down and dug them up by the roots. I mean, he dug them up by the roots. He didn't just chop them down. He dug them up by the roots. And
that's how you get rid of them.
well, that's right. I mean, that's how you get rid of a perennial plant. Now, for those of you who don't know what pokeberry is, it's called Phytolacca americana, and here's a picture of it. And I'm taking this off of Wikipedia. But check out that stuff. Now this is the kind of pokeberry that's common in the American Midwest. Now there are other varieties. There's a whole list of them on Wikipedia all over North America, but that's, this is what we're talking about right here. Now, the reason I'm so intrigued by this is that when I was a kid, when I was a boy, we had one of these. It's interesting. We only had one of these things growing in our side yard, off by the edge of the
Fence row.
yeah, the fence. By the fence row before the field started. Sometimes we had some livestock in there. Sometimes we had, well, most often we had crops, but occasionally when we had hogs, the hogs would be rooting around against the fence. And but there was this pokeberry. Well, I called it a pokeberry tree when I was a kid, but it's a pokeberry plant. And this thing got, my heavens, well, and they can get quite tall. I guess some varieties can get up to almost 82 feet tall. Now that would be an amazing thing to see, and that would be a scary sight. But anyway, this thing would get up around 12, 15 feet tall. And when I would mow the yard, we had one of these. It was called a rocket. It had, you had to yank the thing up on a geared handle to get the thing started. Now, I never was strong enough to do it. I was never strong enough to do that. And my dad would always have to start this thing for me, even when I got up to be like teenage years. I just yeah, it was a lawnmower. I couldn't get this thing started. And well, it was temperamental anyway, but learned a lot about internal combustion engines by having to take the thing apart and put it back together several times. But anyway, I had to mow around this thing. I had to mow, mowed, and I was always kind of very leery and scared to go underneath this thing, because I had been told when I was like 3 or 4, that this is a poisonous plant, and you don't horse with this plant. It's poisonous. It'll kill you. Well, I mean, that sticks with you, doesn't it? You know. So I'd always try to dart around this thing as fast as I could when I was mowing. Now, normally I would try to mow up against all the edges of the fences. You know, you'd pull the thing, you'd shove it in, and you'd pull it back, shove the thing in, pull it back. But this thing, I just sort of make a swath around it and let it go at that. You know, and I never wanted the berries to hit me in the head or any of it to hit me in the head. I was just, I was very leery of it. So. Paul and I got time about this today, and he mentioned something that I had forgotten, although I had heard as a kid, that you could use the berries, these purple berries, to make ink. You know, and indeed one of the common names.
My stepmother brought it up.
Yeah, one of the common names is red ink plant. You know, and it's called Virginia poke, American nightshade. You know. It is a member of the nightshade family, or at least I've been told that. Now, that may not be the case, but that's folklore, you know. And and parts of the plant are toxic, you know, and we know that. And but you've got these purple flowers, or these purple berries, rather. Well, they're the result of the flowers, and now, doesn't that just look evil and dangerous? You know, doesn't that look scary? It scares me. It's pretty, but it scares me. You know, and so
that's what you would pick off a plant and make ink.
Well, that's right. You'd make ink out of it. Yes. Yeah, you'd make ink out of it, but of course, some people, will, and there's a whole page in Wikipedia about how, I guess you can, when the plant reemerges after, the winter time, you can use the young leaves, and if you boil them 3 times, then they make, you can use the leaves in a salad, hence poke salad or poke salad, depending. And I guess there's
not mine.
Well, there's a poke salad festival and places, and but essentially all of this plant is very toxic. The root is especially toxic. Now, interestingly, the berries themselves aren't, unless you crush the seeds. Now, if you crush the seeds, it's the seeds that are toxic, not the berry part itself. It's the seeds that are toxic. And
within the berry.
Well, yeah, because the seeds are contained in the berry. And so ingestion of the poisonous parts of the plant may cause severe stomach cramping, nausea with persistent diarrhea, and vomiting, sometimes bloody vomiting, slow and difficult breathing, weakness, spasms, hypertension, severe convulsions, and death. Now, frankly, that doesn't sound like an atropine-based death, although it could be, if you were at the edge of overdose of, atropine to the point of, basically getting ready to kill your brain. It says, however, consuming fewer than 10 uncooked berries is generally harmless to adults. Okay. Well, then of course, but basically it's that's do don't crush.
Don't do that.
Don't crush the seeds. Yes, don't do that. Don't do that. Yes, see, don't do that. So that was a little bit of fun reminiscence that Paul and I were engaging in today. We had one of these things spring up at the end of our front porch when the front porch was still sort of, in a front porchy state. Now, you haven't seen that, obviously. You've seen sort of the stacked up planks that we have out front.
Or keep trying to make it feasible to get into the front of the house.
Yes. In Ohio, in law, that's called an obvious hazard. And that relieves you of some of the civil liability if you have an obvious hazard, as opposed to a hazard that's marked that's maybe not be an obvious hazard.
Should we mark it?
Well, you don't have to. It's an obvious hazard under Ohio law.
By just one scene.
Well, I always, when people get up on there, I always tell them to be very careful, very clearly. So, uh, so that was Paul's effort today. God bless him. And so,
There were 6 of those things out there. A couple of them have broken off and were like dying off, but still, I dug them up also. Roots and all, and threw them over the fence.
Paul's very thorough, as we saw yesterday. And actually, the current plant around the house is in between our two arborvitae trees on either side of the little front projection on our house. And I don't know if I knocked that down today or this last year.
Is there one down there?
No, it's right over here. It's right out here by the front windows.
There is?
Well, I may have,
Well,
I may have knocked that thing down earlier in the season. Didn't keep me from leaving the ladder up against the front of the house. I did it.
Oh, I was Scotsman's weird rooster woodpecker.
Well, that was when I was repairing the hole the woodpecker had made in the front of the house. But it was a bit of a struggle for me to drag that ladder out and put it up there, and then let alone I steeled myself to climb up there with my bad knee, and but I didn't want a hole coming through the living room wall, which would have happened if I had not sealed it. So sometimes you do what you have to do, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there it is. Gala. So we watched a really good movie on YouTube this morning called what was it called? It was Roommate Wanted by a fellow named Peterson. So look at that.
It was really weird.
No, it's great. It was very much reminiscent of the Paul Bright Eating Raoul type movies. Yeah. Well, and John Waters as well, as Paul was saying. Yes. So, alrighty. Bye-bye now, YouTubers.
Have a good night.